And so today I want to talk about pretty much the years from 2001 to 2004. So again, high school, college years, I was really just trying to fit in, looking for acceptance. I was basically what you call a lukewarm Christian. I had a very strong Christian foundation growing up, a very strong faith, a very close relationship with my Savior. And in high school, I pretty much walked away from my faith. A lot of that had to do with, my parents having to basically split up, kind of like my dad's company moved to Houston, and then my mom went back to school to get her master's, and I just didn't really have a whole lot of guidance. My mom wasn't able to discipline me, blah, 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 blah. So again, my early 20s, late teens, early 20s, I was just like wanting to belong. And I had extremely low self-esteem because I had just gotten over an abusive relationship with a young boy, for 3 years, and that took a toll on me. So self-esteem was low, confidence was low, belief in myself, all of that. So I'm in 1998, I moved to Austin, Texas. One of my best friends was here, living here in Austin, going to UT, and she's like, "Why don't you come down here? It's time for a fresh start." And I was like, "Let's do it." And so I eventually applied to go to UT myself, and I was accepted, and I majored in theater and dance because of my dance, gymnastics background. I thought, hey, why not? And I really wasn't completely sure exactly what I wanted to do with my life, so I thought that maybe, being a professional dancer, going to New York, doing all of that would be the dream. And shortly after I started school, I went to the gym one day, Gold's Gym. I was working out, and I met my husband there. My husband is 13 years older than I am. And so he was already established, he had his own business, and we ended up getting married 1 year to the date that we met. And again, I said in my previous video, I don't necessarily advise anyone to do that. It's best to just take your time, really get to know somebody, go through different seasons of your life, go through the good times, the hard times, and all the in-between, and just, see how it goes, see if you truly are compatible. I ended up marrying my husband. He pursued me pretty strong in the beginning, and it kind of freaked me out at first. But I did end up marrying him, and I was drawn to him because he's a very strong leader. My dad was emotionally absent in my life, and very quiet, an introvert, and so I was really attracted to that part of my husband where, he just he's a man's man, and he had his own business, and we also grew up the same way, very strong Christian background. We knew the same songs, like the same worship songs from back in the day, and also all the hymns, and so we had a very similar upbringing as far as our faith is concerned. And so we got married, and it's interesting because I definitely was a lukewarm Christian, not living for the Lord, was partying a lot. and he actually was in the same type of season. He grew up a Christian, but he had walked away, not completely like walked away, but again, having one foot in the church, one foot in the world. And so when we got married, we both ended up recommitting our lives to the Lord. And so that was awesome. Obviously, life changed. I was planning on going to New York and being a dancer, but that changed when I got married. And so I ended up getting a job teaching dance, teaching gymnastics to young children. We, like right after we got married, my husband had a business opportunity in Conroe, Texas, which is just north of Houston. And so we just up and left. And back then, like, Conroe has come a long ways since 2001. But back then, there wasn't a lot of people that lived there. It was very country, very slow paced. A lot of people that are retired live in Conroe. And so it was just a very much slower pace of life. So it was really hard to find friends and to find a church that we could really get plugged into. And so we were there for a short time. But while we lived there, I remember we worked out at a gym, very small gym, and it was called the Fit Gym. And it was very interesting because there was quite a few bodybuilders, fitness competitors that worked out in this gym. And so that was how I got introduced to bodybuilding and fitness competitions. So back then, I think we met some people at the gym, and so they were telling us about just the fitness industry itself and all of these competitions. And so I found one that was not too far from where we lived, and so I went and checked it out, and I was like, yes, this is for me. Because back then fitness competitors had to do a 2-minute routine that incorporated dance, gymnastics, strength moves like one-arm push-ups and other types of just really strength movements. And so it was a lot of fun. I just remember, choreographing a routine and then, getting the costume, and then, you had to wear like a bikini and then also a one piece, and just that whole, it's just a whole nother world. It's a different way of life. And the diet, oh my gosh, the diet was intense. 12 weeks of just hardcore, like, dry chicken, a lot of egg whites, a lot of oatmeal, sweet potatoes, broccoli, fish, and it was pretty much the same thing every day. But it was amazing how I could transform my body in such a short period of time. So I was doing a lot of lifting, heavy lifting, and dieting really hard. And I mean, I got into just the best shape of my life. And my husband, he had done some bodybuilding back in the 80s. And so he, knew a lot about, working out and nutrition. And so basically he was kind of like my coach. And so that was our thing. We didn't have kids, and we had a very simple life. And so we just poured ourselves into, the gym and working. And so, some really, really good memories. And my first competition was in 2002. And I remember the very first competition I went to, it was in Dallas, and the last week I went flat because just my diet wasn't quite right. I should have had a lot more carbohydrates, and I just came in lean as can be, but my muscles were not full. So unfortunately, I think I came in like 4th place, and I was pretty disappointed. But then the Ronnie Coleman Classic was the very next weekend in Dallas. And so the judge gave me some feedback, and she's like, Christine, go eat some pancakes, fill up those muscle bellies. And so I did exactly what she told me to do, took in a lot more food, a lot more carbohydrates, and also, the water intake, I changed that. And anyways, I ended up coming in to the Coleman Classic way better and came in second place. So then that meant that I qualified for the national championships, which was going to be the following year in Las Vegas. So again, at this time, as far as the addiction part goes, in my last video, I talked about how in 2001, before we had moved to Conroe, my husband suffered an elbow injury because he was lifting heavy furniture one day at work, and he went to the doctor. They gave him a prescription for tramadol. And so one day I was in the bathroom getting ready for work. I don't know, it was like the next week or something like that. And I was just, doing my makeup, doing my hair, just getting ready, and saw the bottle of pills sitting right there on the counter. And as I'm getting ready, I'm thinking, I wonder what it's like, because I had heard of people taking pain pills with a couple of drinks, margarita or, glass of wine at dinner, and, just taking the edge off and just enjoying it, feeling good. And so I decided to take one. And in my last video, I had talked about the effects, how it gave me energy, euphoria. But at the end of the day, what it really did for me is that it gave me confidence. And I felt like I could finally be me. I could finally be myself. I was comfortable in my own skin. I was like, this is the solution to my problem. Finally, I found the solution. And that is how I felt. And at the time, I was just taking it every now and then, like probably every other weekend maybe. I'd go out on date night with my husband, and I would take a tramadol and have a glass of wine. And that's how it was. That's how it was until 2004. So for 3 years, that's how it was. It was just every now and then. I was getting it through illegal online pharmacies, buying it from Mexico and other places overseas. And it wasn't an issue. Like I didn't face any negative consequences because of it. And it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't a big deal. And so, we moved to Conroe, and I got into fitness competitions. And then in 2003 was the opportunity to go to the national championships in Las Vegas. And I'll never forget, it was just one of the best moments of my life. I went in there, I was the newbie, and there were so many girls who had been competing for years. They looked amazing, oh my gosh. And I just went in there and I was like, I'm just gonna have a good time. I'm gonna do my best. And, if I place, in the top 10, I'll be happy. And so I performed, and it was so much fun. I had a routine to like James Brown mix, and I had this costume that basically I looked like a pimp, and I even had a cigar that I wasn't smoking it, but I had it in my mouth like I was smoking it. And then I remember I did this aerial off the top part of the stage onto the bottom part of the stage, threw the cigar into the audience, ripped off the jacket, it was just a blast. And so anyways, that night was when, they were going to call out the top 5. And I remember just standing there in line thinking, okay, yeah, I'm sure there's no way that I'll place in the top 5. And then all of a sudden they call my number, and it didn't dawn on me. Like, I heard the number, and then all of a sudden my sister-in-law is sitting out in the audience. She's just, screaming like crazy. And then I'm like, hold on. And then I had to look down at my number. I was like, oh, that's me. And so, anyways, I ended up placing fifth, which I was just so happy, so happy. It was like one of the best moments ever. And yeah, so I placed in the top 5 at my first national championships. So during that time, like shortly after that show, we finally had an opportunity to move back to Austin, which we were really happy about because Conroe wasn't doing it for us. You know, we needed a church, we needed friends, we needed our community, and we just like Austin better. And so this was the time going into 2004, and this is where we both decided, okay, it's time for me to get a job that pays more, because my job was teaching dance, teaching gymnastics, and it just wasn't paying the bills. And so I decided, okay, I went to like one of those temp agencies, and I said, okay, find me something, like some type of office type work. And so they did, and so I started this job working for a drug research company, and let's just say this. I moved up very quickly from receptionist to the regulatory department. And my job was, let's just say I didn't use my natural gifts and abilities. I was in a room, there were no windows, felt like I was in a dungeon, and all I did was audit paperwork all day long. And I didn't talk to anybody, and it was a very depressing job, let's just say that. And so the reason why we did that is because my husband and I said, we were ready to finally buy a home. And so we did. We bought a house, and I got this new job, and he was working. And this is when the addiction changed. And this is where I'm going to stop for today, because I was in this season of my life where basically I stopped doing what I loved, which was teaching dance, teaching gymnastics, doing fitness competitions, and just working. And working, not that work's bad, I mean, we all do it, and I love my job now, thank God. But back then, I hated my job. Hated it. It was, just looking at paperwork all day long, which is not my strength. Actually, one of the challenges in that, even to this day, is being detail oriented. So I was not in the right line of work. So anyways, I hated my job. My husband and I were going into a season where we were not doing well in our marriage, and facing a lot of uncertainty about the future, and also just facing a lot of financial challenges. So we were arguing a lot. And so the combination of those things, I decided that I was going to start taking tramadol, not just every now and then, but I was going to start taking it every day. And this, my friends, is where it all changed for the worse. This is where I became physically addicted, mentally addicted, and this is where the lies began. This is where the shame came in and completely took over. And I'm going to stop here, and then in tomorrow's video, in the next video, I will talk about the progression of addiction, of the disease of addiction, and what it did to my life, what it did to my family's life. And yeah, it's going to be hard to talk about. to be honest with you, but that's why I'm doing this, because I know so many people who struggle or have struggled or are struggling and are looking for hope. So I will stop there. Thank you so much for checking out this video. And yeah, tomorrow I will get into the progression of the disease and what it did, when how it affected our family. So tune in, and I hope that everyone has a beautiful, blessed day, and I will see all of you tomorrow. All right, God bless.